So when did you arrive in Mendocino?
To live for the rest of my 8 years was in September 1st, 1969. And I had come up here with my parents camping like at Van Dam. So I knew about the coast, and I knew about Mendocino, the art center and all that kind of stuff. But that was just the 60s. That was when you were real young, that there was this rejuvenating energy, consciousness. And before that, the 50s, it was, the aftermath of World War II, the big cars, car culture, barbecues, all middle-class culture and all that. But the 60s stirred everything up. And it stirred me up when I started going to San Diego State College. I met other kind of people. And then Joan Baez came to our college to sing and to talk to us, and then other people. Adam Clayton Powell came to our college. He was a congressman from New York, African American, and other people, labor organizers, just a whole other world than Southern California ever dealt with. I got connected up with San Francisco and Berkeley, and so I decided to hit the road, to leave my family, leave my school, leave my county, leave the state, eventually to leave the nation, go to Europe, just to meet. That was the whole idea, to meet as many people as I could meet and try to find a new reality where people live together in a communal. I lived communally in college a couple times, and that's where that was my center of gravity. And then so I started a community traveling in Europe. It was getting cold in the fall, and we decided to go to North Africa and panhandling. So that was the whole thing. I gave up the easy life. I didn't have a house. I didn't know where my meals were coming from. It was all relying on meeting other people and relating to other people. And I did that, for the rest of my life. I'm still doing it now. There was this thing of out of balance. Civilization is out of balance. It's spinning out of control. And if you have a land base, if you live on the land, you have the ability to create your own kind of lifestyle. And so that led to organic gardening, learning about herbal medicine, learning how other people lived on the earth, even people in Tibet and Africa, other kind of religions. So it was a whole other thing that never happened before. It never happened in the 50s. The beatniks dealt with consciousness, but they didn't deal with the world's people as much. There's something in time. The Vietnam War was just tearing up the country, and all the protests, all the disintegration of pulling apart, and so people that were attracted to San Francisco by the thousands, like 10, 15,000 people in 1967. There was anthem music made and all this stuff. All these people, a lot of real young people, runaways, they came to San Francisco. And actually, what they call the Summer of Love, they say that actually happened the year before, 1966, because that was a year that all the music was blooming, and it was before it became known to the whole nation. After that, the whole nation, they wanted to come to San Francisco, and it overwhelmed San Francisco. They didn't have the wherewithal to deal with tens of thousands of extra people. So after that year, by the end of the year, that whole thing, what they call the Summer of Love, was over with. All these outside people came, real bad drugs and rip-offs and all this stuff. So the next year, a lot of people that had wherewithal, they discovered Marin County, Sonoma County, Mendocino County, all the way up to Canada, all the way up to British Columbia. And they say, oh, we can live here, we can start a new life in the country, a rural life. And that's a Morningstar, and he bought his land in, I think, 66 or something, early 60s. It was just some land he was a musician, famous musician. He had wherewithal just to have land outside the city, and he got overwhelmed when 1968 arrived. And he only had 32 acres, and there were hundreds of people wanting to live, and he was the first one that I know. I mean, it was all over the place.
What was his name?
Lou Gottlieb. And in 1968, he was flooded. And so he had chicken coops. People were living in chicken coops. People were living in makeshift cabins and all that. They were all over the place. And so he was overwhelmed, and then the neighbors would drive by, and here's all these people frolicking and having a good time, and it just blew their mind. What are they doing? What is going on here? So he actually, in the winter of 1967 and 1968, would have coffee at the Occidental Hotel in Occidental every weekend to talk to Bill Wheeler, he was heir of the Singer sewing machine fortune. And he bought a spread west of Occidental, over 300 acres on a ridge. All the ridge is just real diverse property. And he would talk to Bill Wheeler every weekend, begging him, you gotta open up your land, I'm overwhelmed. And that was a movement that happened in that environs called the free land movement. The idea that if you have land, you got to open it up to the people, and you just got to accept the people and don't interfere. And Bill Wheeler took up the cause. He opened up the land in early '68, and all these people flocked to Bill Wheeler. Had plenty of room, and it was real diverse. If you wanted to be away from people, there was all these ridges. You could find places to get away from people. Or if you were more sociable and wanted to be close to all the action, you could live near the garden or where Bill Wheeler lived. And all. There was this man in San Francisco that in 1968 that knew about Wheeler's Ranch. And he had a pickup truck. He was retired. He had an antique business in San Francisco earlier. And he just created his own job that I'm going to drive around San Francisco and, the thing of vibes, to scope out people's vibes, to see if I can find anybody that really is looking for this kind of lifestyle. You have to give up the old way of life when you live on the land. There's a lot of work to do. Growing vegetables, raising your children. So it's a whole, you can't do two things at once. You can't be in two places. To go to one, you have to leave the other behind. So he drove around San Francisco, a lot in Golden Gate Park, and he'd see all these young people aspiring that, oh, this is what I want. I'm trying to get away from the hustle and bustle, the chaos of modern living. And sure enough, he would spot people and he would say, come along, I'll take you to a place. And he'd drop them off at Wheeler's Ranch. So the person that started our community, when they got to San Francisco, the guy spotted him and said, you know, and that's how they found out about Wheeler's Ranch. And then once Wheeler's Ranch got too popular and it was full, over 300 people, and then the county authorities found out about it and tried to close it down, that's when they said, no, we got to move north. And somebody told them, oh, Mendocino, go to Albion. There's all kind of people buying land in Albion. Surely you can find a place to live in Albion. And that they picked me up on the highway in Geyserville on September 1st, 1969. And they said they were going to Mendocino. And they were from Wheeler's Ranch. They told me about that it's getting busted. It's, you know, they're going to close it down. And I had spent 2 weeks in Mendocino earlier in August of '69 with my girlfriend. I met a woman that I had a child, and she let us stay there. And they had to go to UCSF, and she wanted us to house sit till they got back. So I had some roots in Mendocino, and then so when I met these people from Wheeler's Ranch, and we got to Mendocino on September 1st, '69, and the fog was so dense you could hardly see. The driver was so paranoid, never been on the coast, and you could only see 20 feet ahead. So I guided them into Mendocino, and they bought me a cup of soup at the cafe there. And then they say, oh, we need a place to stay. And I said, oh, I know some people. And I knocked on the gate of the people where I stayed with my girlfriend earlier that summer, and they put us up. And the next morning, they were headed out to Albion to find a place to stay. And they asked me, do you want to join our group? And I've been on the road for close to 2 years. Close to 2 whole years, looking for some new horizon, some new, and that was the thing I needed, to have a land base, to have a place to live on the land, and it solved all your problems. Places to work, places to be creative, places to visit with other people, to learn the cultures of other people. But anyway, that's how I ended up in Mendocino, through Wheeler's Ranch. And 2 or 3 years after we got to Mendocino, word came that, oh, Morningstar and Wheeler's got bulldozed by the county of Sonoma because they just couldn't deal with it. It was a culture shock. It was like the future. It was too heavy, you know. And by that time, we were situated in Mendocino, in Albion. We'd lived there for years. We didn't have to worry about rent. We didn't have to worry about. We had no bills. We had a garden spot. We could grow our own food, and a community that it kept expanding and expanding, and that's where I was able to live for 8 years until they had a severe drought. And we moved to Oregon to help out some other people getting situated up there, and found out that they had plenty of water.
While you were here in Mendocino, did you experience any of the music, any of the outdoor boogies, or what was that like?
Oh yeah, we were at the center, because there was Toad Hall, a hall out Compton Ukiah Road later, after we got wheels. That's after we'd been 5 or 6 years living in Albion. But about, we stayed on the land and didn't go out too much for the first 2 or 3 years because we had to get our skills, living on the land skills, gardening, herbal skills, staying healthy. That's a whole thing. A lot of people would get sick and didn't know how to take care of themselves. And so anyway, that we stayed 1970. We stayed home 1971. We stayed home in 1972. We found out that people in Albion that had means, wherewithal, found this school called the Albion School up the Albion Little River Road, and it's been sitting there since the 20s. Nobody's lived there. When the Albion Mill closed, well, that's the last the school was used. They found out who owned the school, somebody in San Francisco, and they went down and asked them, can we rent it? And they said, oh, we'll rent it to you if you have insurance. So that was the whole thing. We had to have a lot of boogies there all the time, every week pretty much. And they would sell meals, had a kitchen there, great kitchen. And so that was the center of life for Albion. So I didn't really do much music-wise, going to Mendocino, traveling around, and never Ukiah, and never popular music and all that. Was just staying put, which and that's where this guy L.C. Robinson, a blues group from Oakland, fantastic blues thing, and Dirty Legs, and all these groups have come through every Sunday, and we were part of the community center. We were members of the community, so they'd let us in free. We didn't have to pay. They'd feed us, and we participated. We had an herb class there every Wednesday, and taught herbs in the fall and winter, and early spring, and so that was my introduction to me. And then there's this guy named Lenny Lax. I guess he's still alive. I see a post about him. I don't know if it's the same Lenny Lax, but he ran the soundboards, and there were weddings there. We had our own band, played drums. There was a local boogie, they call it boogie woogie, piano player. His name was Jim. Forgot his last name. He was always playing music there, and another African American drummer had a drum set, Busby. He would play in the community center. And then we would play conga drums, and then there was all kind of local artists that would play, folk artists and all that. There was a music hub, the community center. People came from all over the county. They come from Compshe, and there was a newspaper back in the 70s that used to advertise the events at the community center. I just found out when I worked at the Kelly House Museum. They had a bunch of copies, and I would see the advertising. I didn't know anything about it when I lived in Albion. Very active scene, though. And then Albion was full of people from the city, and a lot of them were musical for birthdays, full moon events, and all that. There was music all the time. And so there's this whole called, in horticulture terms, it's called cross-pollination, where different people pick up things from different cultures, and it becomes their culture. It becomes something that's internal in their life. And so, once I moved here to Mendocino, and there was a thing of, there was a lot of people that were dispossessed, the same boat that we were on, and they were hell-bound and determined to move out of the city. And they arrived here in Mendocino, and there weren't any jobs. There wasn't any, people didn't have money. So the county started this thing where Redwood Roofers is now south of Fort Bragg. They rented that building to pass out commodities. And that was a whole world. We finally got a job there helping pass out commodities just 3 days a month. And somebody told us about the Pomo Indians in Manchester, that they still have a roundhouse, they still have a coherent culture. And so we went there, and they said, oh no, we're closed to the outside, but you want to go to the Kashai people in Stewart's Point. And that was, for me, I was, let me see, in 1972, I was, that would be 23 and 69. So I was, 25, 26 years old or whatever. And it was a 4-day festival they had in July. And we went for 3 years in a row, 1972, 1973, and 1974. And they kind of took us in because we were interested in their culture. When they had their big festival, 4-day festival, they had religious ceremonies, they had laying on of hands, different kind of dances, different kind of music. It was just a whole reality. And on the 4th day was a big feast. So that's that theme that I was talking about, pollination, is that that became part of my life. That's the first time I heard the Indian language spoken, the local language here, Pomo language, and heard of their plight, how people did everything to dispossess them, and back in the old time, 1850s, to actually try to get rid of them. But they have this thing called the roundhouse, and it's a low circular, I think it's 8-sided building, a low building, and the center has the center pole. And they believe in the creator that created all of creation, all the plants. The Sioux people call it the 2-legged, the 4-legged, the winged ones, and the green. And that's what changed my life, the green. I dedicated the rest of my life to plants, learning about plants, how to cook with plants and cure with plants. And so that was a real formative thing in my life, that I was able to get in this situation where I could connect up with the local people and their beliefs and their customs. And so that's why I'm a gardener now, because it still relates. I grow the plants I want to grow. I'm growing things that are medicinal and things that are beneficial, healing, herbs and vegetables. It's just a whole thing.